You're listening to Real Talk Texas with local expert Steve Hakes. Now, here's Steve.
Welcome back to Real Talk Texas. I'm your host, Steve Hakes. We're heard every Sunday here at noon, and please tune in, and we're happy that you are. And keep the phone calls coming in and the emails from our website, realtalktexas.com. Going there, we're getting great response from our listeners out there. And hopefully we're providing the content that you're looking for. So give us feedback on that as well. And today, in the theme of November, when we're talking about protecting your assets and how to structure things so that you're ready to go into 2013 very secure in your personal and business lives, we've got the great honor of having Gerrit Pronsky of Pronsky and Patel from Dallas. He's an expert for us on bankruptcy, debt elimination, and restructuring. And we were talking before the break about the personal bankruptcy side, and we really were getting into some of the differences that have happened since 2005 when they had a reform of bankruptcy and making it more difficult for consumers just to file a 7, which means total liquidation of debt. So you're done. You don't have to redo those or repay those debtors anymore, the unsecured type debt or the exempt type of things like your home. By the way, you did mention homesteading in Texas. If you own a home, listen up, if you own a home or you just bought a house, make sure that you file your homestead exemption, because that really protects you. And it gives you not only tax benefits, but also protects you as well. And if you don't have the form, you can go to any of the county appraisal sites, and you can look up your property, and you can actually download a form on most of the county websites that will help you file this exemption, which really protects you in your personal home in Texas. In Texas and Florida, they're the only two that have such liberal protection laws on your housing. So that's something our listeners really need to know. But I really want to get into, too, is from a very basic standpoint. I've had this event or a culmination of a time period, and I really need to get on with my life, and I just can't take it anymore. I've sold everything I can to keep above water, and now I've finally reached out, and I've contacted you, Gerrit. And how long from the time that I meet with you till and how does that work? Do I still pay my credit card debts and all my debts while I'm talking to you, or how does this work?
Well, it depends a lot on, whether you're business or individual. It depends on what chapter that is best suited for you. But, for example, if you are, I guess the most simple situation, if you're an individual filing a Chapter 7 bankruptcy, it's a fairly simple process, and that also includes a Chapter 7 for a business. It's a fairly simple process that requires filing a petition and some accounting information called schedules that the court and the trustee have to look at, and there's what's called a meeting of creditors, where your creditors are invited. They generally don't come, but you go down and you sit for that meeting, which happens about a month after the bankruptcy is filed. You get a discharge of your debts, and it's about that simple, and it's fairly, it's a fairly short process in a Chapter 7. In a Chapter 13, what that basically means is that you have to commit your what they call disposable income, or the amount of money that you make from your job less your expenses. You have to commit that disposable income to the repayment of creditors for a period of 3 to 5 years.
And how fair is that? I mean, are they going to choke me like I'm being choked right now with paying my bills, or does my life get better?
Well, your life gets better in the sense that it's all basically restructured and in a way that makes sense. And a lot of times that's a chapter that is very helpful to people, for example, that are 3, 4, 5 months behind on their house, because you can what they call deaccelerate the loan on the house, and then you can take that arrearage of, let's say you got 5 months worth of payments you haven't made. You can take that 5 months worth of payments and then repay it out over a period of years in addition to your regular mortgage payments. So it enables you to keep your house. A lot of times if you've got tax problems, and I've seen people that haven't paid taxes in 20 years, and finally the government is slow, but they're sure, and eventually they catch up to you, and that process allows you to pay those out over a period of time and things like that.
Okay, so if you owe back taxes or something like that, there's some ability to, you don't have to pay it all in full right away.
Right.
Okay, perfect. And speaking of owing taxes and things like that, I mean, I look at this thing and say, what a great land we live in where you really do get a second chance. And I know a lot of people don't, or they fight this, especially some of our great Texans out there. They have a lot of pride, and that's a great thing. It tells me a lot about character. And even the people with the greatest character, bad things happen, things they can't overcome. And so they have to go into this. And why do you think that in the United States we have this vehicle available to us?
Well, I think, the overall strategy or the overall objective of a bankruptcy, and it really depends on whether you're talking about a restructuring type of a bankruptcy like a Chapter 11 and a liquidation like a 7. But the basic concept, for example, in a 7 is to give the debtor what they call a fresh start. Contrary to what some people think about abuse in the bankruptcy process, bankruptcy is usually filed, Chapter 7 and these, simpler cases are usually filed because somebody's gone through some tragic life event, an illness, a loss of a job, large pay reduction, as you've mentioned, divorce, things like that. The studies show that that's really the primary reason people end up filing bankruptcy. Chapter 7 is designed to give what they call the honest and unfortunate debtor a fresh start. Chapter 11 is a little bit different, and it's designed basically to preserve what is a viable going concern, thinking that the value of that going concern is substantially greater than if you shut it down. Everyone loses their job, and you sell the assets for small cents on the dollar. The going concern has more value over time, so it really preserves that value for the benefit of not only the owner, but the creditors get more than they get in a liquidation.
Yeah, absolutely. And, one of the things I want to make sure that everyone out there, I mean, there's a lot of questions that come up, I think, for our listeners out there. And it's, okay, I'm in this situation, don't really know how to handle it. So if you're in that situation out there and you're listening and you really want some real expert advice, please reach out to us at realtalktexas.com. Send me a quick note, and I'll get you in touch with Gerrit, and he can help you out, I'm sure. So, and the other thing I wanted to make sure everybody's clear on, and it's the next thing. Okay, once I decide to do this, it's a very difficult decision. It's very humiliating and a very difficult time, I think, for people to go through this situation, even if they weren't in control of what happened to them. And I always say to people when I'm doing loans and I see a bankruptcy comes up on their credit report, I know immediately what this person's been through. And I always tell them, hey, bad things happen to good people too. And that's really true. It does. And I see it every day as a lender. And so then we get into conversations about, okay, what are you faced with now? So I want to make sure our listeners know out front how, as far as from a home lending standpoint, establishing new credit, typically from what I've heard and what I've seen, as far as getting new credit cards, things like that, I hear that people, once they get their bankruptcy discharge, they'll start getting flooded with emails or mail, direct mail, for here's a $500 credit line. So it's important from a lender standpoint, and I think for as far as restructuring your life going forward, I think it's important. I always tell my kids, and I always say, you need 3 good trade lines with good pay. So it's okay to accept those credit cards to get reestablished as quick as possible. Because what I look at as a lender, if they're 2 years past bankruptcy, have they reestablished themselves? So I would say yes, go ahead and take those 3 credit cards. You don't need more than 3, and you have to activate them. So go charge a tank of gas, pay it off, and put it in a shelf, or a safe deposit box, and handle your credit very, very carefully. And most people are very good about that once they've gone through this. The other thing that you need to know is that when you go to get a home loan to reestablish, you'd be surprised how it's not as difficult as you might think. Standard FHA guidelines say if you're in a Chapter 13 and you've paid everything on time and you've had nothing go into collections, not even medical, after 13 months of being in a Chapter 13, I can get you a regular rate FHA loan to buy a new home. And on a Fannie Mae, or what we call the GSEs, that'd be Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, that's the other place that you get your loans from. That's really a 2 to 4 year type time frame. But one of the things you have to be careful out there, you may be calling up a lender and saying, okay, well, Steve said I could get a loan after 12 months, and I paid everything on time. Why are you saying no to me? That's the standard for an FHA insurance or a Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac insurance. That's a normal time frame. But what we're finding right now in the lending industry is that there's overlays. So different banks, different lenders have overlays, and you can always tighten the guidelines. You just can't loosen them. And now they've all decided to tighten them. So there are some lenders out there still that you can get that to happen as far as getting a home loan, or get additional credit once you get through this. I just can't express enough how it's important that you reestablish good credit. And the other piece is that at Affiliated Bank, where I work, we've got something called a Make Sense mortgage. So if we have somebody that's reestablished themselves over 2 years, they've got 20% to put down on a house, and they go to their lender and they say, we can't approve you because you're not far enough out of bankruptcy. But I can identify that it was a one-time event. It was a divorce. It was a illness and they couldn't work or something like that. If I got a good explanation and it makes sense to me, I've been doing this 14 years, I can do that loan. So if you're listening out there and you've got that situation, reach out to me at realtalktexas.com. I want to wrap this up. We really appreciate Gerrit coming into the studio today. If you need advice from Gerrit of Pronsky and Patel in Dallas, reach out to me at realtalktexas.com. We'll get you in touch with them. We really appreciate you coming in the studio today.
Thanks, Steve.
This program is brought to you by the Real Estate Radio Network. Visit realestateradio.us for more info. That's realestateradio.us.